Okay, and we're live. Sorry for the delay. We had three more people joining us, but I guess time zones and all that great stuff, who knows what happens. So happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And if you're watching this in the future, this was recorded on February 14th of 2024. We have visionary panel experts, relationship coaches in the house. So we are going to have a fantastic conversation about love and money. Because what goes hand in hand together? Remember that show with Elle Bundy? What was that show called? I forget the name of it now. Love and Marriage. And it was so funny because they always show the preview of him, the intro of him handing money to his wife and his kids.
Oh,
The whole
yes.
song was like Love and Marriage.
Yes. Married with children. Married with children.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So one of my favorite shows in the younger years. And when I put this panel together, that's all I kept popping in my head was love and marriage, love and money, and all the great stuff that we go through because relationships are so important. And actually, we know that's the theme. February is all about love and relationships, but in all areas of our life, not just with our partners, but also with our friends, our parents, our siblings, our children. So thank you so much for you both being here. Matt and Carina are actually a couple. They are the thriving couple. So they work together helping couples connect and reunite that spark, right? So they're going to introduce themselves and tell you more about that. And if the other coaches join on, we'll introduce them when they come on here. So Matt, why don't you start?
Hey, everyone. Excuse me. Hey, everyone. My name's Matt Hilliard. I am one half of the thriving couple, along with Carina here. And we support couples in having amazing lives, amazing connection, amazing intimacy. And what we working on right now is helping couples increase their couple satisfaction. If they're good, we take them to great. If they're great, we take them to fantastic.
Absolutely. And hi, I'm Carina. I'm a relationship coach and energy expert. And one of the ways that we do that is we know that your subconscious beliefs are part of what create your relationship. How you are in anything will be part of how you are in everything. So I'm so excited to be talking about money today, because as Matt and I were getting ready for this panel, we were like thinking about some of the questions and thinking about what we wanted to share. And what we saw was that at every point when it comes to money, money gets to be a bit of a canary. You can look at it as a canary in a coal mine, or you can look at it as a spiritual teacher. And all the conversations, money's an amplifier. Anything that comes up for you as a couple is an amazing indicator of what you need to work on as a couple. And then we believe that will also help amplify your money.
And one of our foundational beliefs is that relationship is a path. It's a path to growth. It's a path to self-awareness. And the more you keep that in mind, the more you can use your relationship as an opportunity to grow. And the things that come up between the two of you in your relationship are an opportunity to grow independently, but also together as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for that combo intro. I loved it. So beautiful. Zahara, thanks for joining us. So glad to see you here. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us what you do.
My name is Zahara Williams. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I specialize in individual and couples counseling.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I apologize for saying your name incorrectly.
Okay.
And I know you have your beautiful book back there, Betrayal. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This is one workbook that was published of October of last year. It's called After Betrayal: The Journey from Pain to Peace. The workbook is really about doing some self-reflection in terms of experiences with loss and grief and pain and betrayal. And we know betrayal can come in a lot of forms. It can come from family, it can come from friends, it can come from relationships. For some, it can come from self, even if they feel like they've betrayed themselves. And just a journey of working through and navigating that so that they're not getting stuck and it's hindering their ability to have effective, productive relationships in the future, and just even how they feel about themselves.
I love that. So those of you listening, we'll put those links down. They'll be in the show notes. This is going to be posted on my YouTube channel, Money Talks. But right now we're streaming live into the Big Unicorn group. And in the comments, we'll put the links to that. And if you coaches, if you want to drop your links, I'll put them in the comments while we're having our conversation. So we'll get started with the panel questions. We're just going to kind of go round robin, no particular order. So we're going to start with the first one. How do you help couples identify and align their financial values and goals? Carina, let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. So what I love is that life shows you what needs to happen next. So if you're bumping into how can we agree on what house to buy? If you're bumping into how can we agree on what toothpaste to buy? Whatever is coming up for you is exactly what you need to figure out next. So when you see that bump, when you see that place, that fork in the road where you're like, really? You think, what? That's your time to get into conversation, to get curious about your partner. Ask questions. Really, why do you like about that? What feels good about that for you? To really get curious helps to have it not be an attack on your desires. You know, we take things personally, right? Like the world's about to, our nervous system thinks the world's about to end this very second if we don't get things our way. And so when you can slow it down, be like, okay, this is the part where I'm feeling a little activated, and you start to ask some questions, then you can really start to discover together what you want. Maybe having a very big fancy house was a dream you've always had because you grew up in a house that wasn't anything what you liked. Or maybe you really love like feeling cozy and feeling like you have lots of money in the bank and you want a smaller house that just feels safer to you. When you start to share those viewpoints, there's so much more room that opens up for both understanding and making choices that are sensitive and kind to where your partner is at. And it gives you an idea of where to start stretching your comfort zone. Oh, maybe I would love a small house, or, oh, maybe I'd love a big house. I never thought that was even possible. But if you don't talk about it, you never get there to discover the goal that's waiting for you.
I love that. Yeah. Our upbringing has so much to do with our desires. And when we bring two people together from two sets of family, you know, the circumstances that they grew up with versus, you know, the other partner, and then what their desires are differ. And sometimes it can cause a lot of arguments. Thank you for sharing that. Zahara, am I saying it right? I need practice.
Yes, it is Zahara. Yes. So helping couples align, I'm really going to kind of piggyback on what she already said in terms of really the curiosity piece. I think that is so important because there is a tendency to, you know, we have these beautiful minds, and sometimes when you don't know, you make up this nice little storyline about someone's intentions and then personalize. I heard her mention that, personalize what that means in terms of how they interact with you. And it really is important to ask the questions, be inquisitive, right? It's like you're a mini investigative, but not in an interrogating way, right? But more in a let me understand, and let's have a dialogue about where this comes from for you, how it shows up. Is that aligned with your intentions? And when people break those down, they have a better understanding of their partner. They don't feel like when their partner is maybe a little, you know, quiet that particular day, that it is a direct response to how they feel about them, right? And that's very, very important in relationships to know that what your partner goes through, because they had a myriad of life experiences before they met you, surprisingly, right? That shape how they show up in life and how they navigate challenges. And some people internalize, other people are more vocal and verbalizing. And so once you have a better understanding of your partner, then you're able to navigate spaces, ask, and not feel like you're kind of walking on eggshells, and get that clarity that you need.
I love that. You know, and I'm thinking long-term relationships, right? Like I have a client, I was telling Matt Carina earlier, 40 years of marriage, and they don't have open communications. And a lot of times, you know, couples spend their younger years raising the kids, working, you know, doing all the things that they don't even ever have a conversation. They don't date or anything. And it's so important to have that open communication, regardless of you where you are. So I'm going to add this question in here. It's not on the list, but so what do you like? What would you recommend for someone who's in a marriage of 40 years and they're not communicating? They're afraid to talk to their husband because they've gotten into this silent treatment.
Probably get coaching or counseling. I think it's a really good step. There has to be there has to be willingness on both sides to bridge that gap, and it's completely understandable why that gap does occur in the situation of a long marriage and raising kids and bringing in money, but to see if there is willingness on both sides, and it can often be really helpful to have a third party to kind of mediate that reconnection.
Yeah. Showing them the blind spots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can just add, showing the blind spots and creating a space, what happens, why you start walking on eggshells is because it starts to feel like no matter what you say, the other person's gonna lash out, panic, freak out, blame, whatever it is. And there's something magical about having a third party in the space where the person who normally feels attacked feels like they've got someone who's got their back, and the person who's struggling to be understood, let me put it that way, feels like there's someone who's going to understand what they're trying to say. So there's something really magical, and it's a bit of a journey to find your person. I get it if you've maybe tried counseling and the first counselor, we've had clients who were like, we're so glad we found you. The last person we were with made it worse. Right? So it can take a while to find your people as well.
Yeah, definitely want to get a good person, a good fit that's aligned with your values.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I just want to add to what they've already
Absolutely.
said. It's also important to know that, who you were if you've been married 40 years, who you were at 20 is not the same person who you are at 60 or 70 years old. And so being very aware of who you are as you're showing up in the relationship or the marriage is important, but then also taking a step back and saying, what do I need now? Maybe that's different than I needed at that particular time. And have I articulated that? Like if we take personal ownership rather than making this assumption that because you've known me for 40 years, you're supposed to know what I like and what I want and what I needed, because that is not true. As evidenced by this particular situation. And so it goes back to that curiosity aspect, but also understanding that your partner has grown because life has happened and they've been influenced by that. And so their perspectives have changed, their goals have changed. Maybe sitting down and doing, a vision board. If you're not ready to jump to counseling or coaching yet, maybe start with a vision board, just talking about what we'd like to see for our relationships, but also individually, because you still have your individual aspect that exists there. That's very important. And then one thing that I've recently been talking to the couples about that I work with is learning styles. How do you absorb information, right? And so they will say, well, I like to write things down, and to see it. And I say, well, when's the last time you did that in your relationship when you had a challenge? And they're like, never. Like, that might be part of the problem. You're not hearing each other because of tone and emotionality that's showing up, but then also the way that you receive information and absorb it to be able to understand it and conceptualize and put it into practice, you're not actually using that skill that you already have. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's so true and beautiful. And, because when you're younger, you're in that love, those different stages of your relationship and that romantic love, and they're all like, my heart beats fast. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, are you home? When'd you get here? No big deal. and it takes work, right? I mean, my husband and I have been together for 34 years and we still date and we have fun. And I'm doing a 21-day challenge where we ask each other questions, like deep questions that provoke. I don't provoke's probably not the right word. Deep questions that help us connect into our dreams, into what is it, our goals, what do we want to accomplish, and how do we feel about certain things. Safety is huge, because as you get older into retirement, you think about your finances, and we're both retired from our career jobs, and we have access I can't talk today, access to our assets. And there's I don't want to touch those. I don't want to touch those. And we've been saving all of these years. And now there's this fear. And I'm like, okay, what is this fear really about? And having that tough conversation. And he's like, it's my security blanket. Do you want me to touch our security blanket? And, we spent over 30 years contributing to it, growing it, making sure that it was, mastered investings. And I mean, it's like doing a 23% ROI right now. And he's like, I love watching it grow. Like, this is his hobby, right? To watch the investments grow. And I'm like, oh, and like, I'm a spender. I'm like, well, it's here for our retirement. Here's our rainy day. Let's go wild. Let's go to Europe. Let's go here. Let's go there. And he's like, wait a minute. Like, we might got 20 years left to live. So let's pace ourselves. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And Matt, we'll have you answer the question now. I'll reread it. How do you help coaches or how do you help couples identify and align their financial values and goals?
Few things, and I think we've covered a lot of them. One thing I wanted to add was having the conversations about our families of origin and simple questions of each other, like, what was your mother's relationship? What did you learn about money from your mom? What did you learn about money from your dad or whoever your caregivers were? What did you learn about money from the society that you grew up in? Carina and I had quite kind of similar upbringings in a way, but we also had, we also had like long-term relationships before we met, and there were things that occurred in those relationships that influenced how we relate to saving money, spending money, thinking about money, feeling money. So to just, and like Zahara, you were saying, like that curiosity, like coming from a place of curiosity and having those questions, because the things we were brought up with become assumptions that we don't question, and we kind of expect other people to have similar assumptions to us, especially the people that we fall in love with and get into relationships with, and it's often not the case. And there may be areas of overlap, but it's the areas that don't overlap that cause the challenges. So ask those questions, because our money stories start really, really young.
Oh yes, definitely. Very deep in our subconscious are those childhood beliefs, things that we were taught that are ingrained in our brain, dictating how we spend our money today. Thank you for that. All right, the next question. In your experience, what role does communication play when couples discuss finances? And what strategies do you recommend for fostering open and healthy conversations? We'll start with you this time, Matt.
Yeah, so as we've been saying, communication is so important. The big challenges occur when we don't talk about stuff and we just kind of do what we know how to do and don't check in with each other. A good strategy is make it as easy as possible to have these conversations. And by that I mean, it's not necessary to have like the money summit in your relationship. Like, we're going to sit down for 3 hours and we're going to talk about money. We're going to lock the doors. No one leaves for 3 hours. But it's like, okay, like, be honest about it. Okay, this is uncomfortable for me. How do you feel about it? Feels like over here, it feels uncomfortable. It feels vulnerable. I'm kind of scared of what kind of might come up. I'm scared that we might fight, or I'm scared that I might kind of freeze. So let's set a time, let's set a date, let's get some wine, let's get some snacks. And maybe we want to do this like half an hour at a time. So we don't want to have a 3-hour conversation. What if we start off with a 20-minute conversation? We plan it, we know when we're going to set the timer. When it rings, 20 minutes is up, and we're just gonna step away. We're going to have a little celebration that we did it. And also, like, give ourselves permission to be like, okay, like, I've got a time out for like 5 minutes in this conversation because I'm getting overwhelmed and I'm kind of, I'm not listening to you anymore. My shit's coming up. So can we take 5 minutes and then we can come back to the conversation? Or let's cap it off now and pick this up in our next 20-minute session or our next 30-minute session. So kind of like sort of weave it into your life instead of having it as this like standalone kind of monolithic conversation that you may both be dreading.
Yeah, I love that. Great advice. Thank you. Zahara.
Yeah, I would say that, one, be mindful that it's not, if money is not something that you've talked about, on a regular basis, expect to be anxious. Go ahead and just say, I'm probably going to be anxious to talk about it, and that's okay. But once you do it, the anxiety is more leading up to the thing than actually once you do the thing, you're like, oh, I can breathe. That was actually not as stressful as I anticipated, right? Because the anxiety tells you stories, right? It tells you what it thinks the outcome is going to be. So once you actually do it, you acknowledge there's going to be some anxiety and some discomfort. Being consistent, normalizing it will decrease that anxiety and distress over time, and you will find it much easier to do. The hardest part is just taking that first step and then making a plan to be consistent. So I heard he mentioned, don't try to take it all on at once, right? Don't try to have this 3-hour strategy session. Now, unless that works for you, there are some people that they just operate in that way, and that is absolutely okay, right? But if you know that maybe you operate in that way and your partner doesn't, it's going to be about finding a nice, healthy balance of how are we going to approach this first? Maybe even just having that conversation. How are we going to approach this first? And what does that look like? Understanding that it's not written in stone. So you want to be a little bit flexible because life does happen, right? But making sure that you prioritize it, being able to be open, and that means creating space for your partner to be open and not judging and criticizing them because they do things different from you, because you're not clones of each other. That's also going to be very important when it comes to communicating about money and thinking, again, as he mentioned, what we grew up with, I think, was we take that as fact, right? And we just say that's how it's supposed to be. Understanding that what you and your partner need may look different, surprisingly, from what you were accustomed to, and also being okay with that. It's not about right or wrong. It's about what makes sense for us as a collective.
Yeah, great advice. That's amazing. The, thought of two couples sitting down together and having that anxiety. Like I felt that anxiety younger in my marriage when we, sat down. It's just like, oh, we're going to have the money talk. It's like, oh man, is this going to take hours? Like you're a 3-hour summit. Like my husband loves to talk about money. And when I was like, when we first met, I was just like, don't we have something better to do? I don't want to talk about finances because that was taboo when I was growing up. And he's like, well, no, we're going to sit down and we're going to go over these things. And, I just remember being so resistant, especially he loves to track his investments every day and see how they grow. And I'd be like, what a waste of time. Now I do it. And it's fun to watch your money grow, but like understanding that you are not clones of each other. I love how you said that, because a lot of times I think we go into a relationship thinking, oh, they're going to be just like me, when in reality they're totally opposite. So those of you listening out there, if you're having these aha moments with that, understand that you are not a clone of each other. I love that. Carina, your take on it.
Oh, so many good things. So many good things. I think I'm going to pick up on what you just said, Lisa, about starting the money talk, and you a little bit, Zahara, is declare your intention. Because the truth is we all want to feel good about money. Like some people feel just generally terrible about money, or some people love their money strategy, but the goal in a couple is that you feel good about money together. So if you're going to take small bites, like Matt said, and you're going to, go in with kindness and compassion, like Zahara said, then make it clear with each other. Okay, so let's practice being calm and loving, talking about money. Or, okay, so let's figure out this vacation we keep talking about. Let's look at the numbers to see if we can make it happen. Or, when it's really clear like that, and Lisa, you alluded to that when your husband was like, no, let's look at our numbers and let's see how things are tracking. Let's look at the details. Then you can be like, okay, well, at least I know what to expect. And I think knowing what to expect can really help our nervous systems just feel prepared for, just feel prepared in our capacity to head into that conversation.
Yeah, be prepared. I love that. Thank you. So can you, we'll start with Zahara. Can you share common financial conflicts you've encountered with couples, and what strategies do you recommend for resolving these conflicts?
Oh, a couple. I will say that I definitely work with couples who, and we talked about this, avoidance. Like that is the common conflict of one person saying, let's talk about it, and the other person running away, right? And hiding, like, I don't want to talk about it. This makes me uncomfortable. And so again, making it more digestible for the person that is not the money person. Lisa, you talked about that at the beginning, like, can we do something else? Do we have to have this talk? I'd rather not. And so making it fun and exciting is also helpful, figuring out, making a game of it, as opposed to this very serious conversation that we have to sit down and talk about. Talking about your relationship with the money is also important, and where that comes from. Again, going back to understanding your partner's lens and how they view money, how they utilize money. Definitely, there are card decks. I don't want to toot, but I have one here. But it asks about, like, what is your relationship with money, right? How do you manage money? Are you strategic? Are you a saver? Are you, what does that look like for you? And then what would that look like in a relationship? Those things are really important when it comes to having those difficult conversations, particularly when you have somebody that's avoiding with that. And then the person that's a little maybe more rigid when it comes to money conversation is giving your partner grace. It's really, really important, and understanding that you don't become this. I like to say this a lot. You don't become a subject matter expert overnight. So if this is your thing and you're really, really good at it, expect that you got here in 30 years. You cannot expect your partner to be there, and they may never get there. So that's also really important, right? Is acceptance, right? When it comes to the challenges that exist, is accepting the differences, as opposed to trying to make your partner be like you. So that's important. So acceptance, having fun with it, understanding the difference, and going from there. Yeah.
Yeah, so important. And I liked how you touched about different money personalities. There's 7 money archetypes at idatemoney.com. And if you're curious to know which one you're more like, go check it out. It's the money dating game, and you get to choose your partner. And I think a lot of people shy away from that because, one, they're like, oh, I don't need a money dating partner. I'm good. I know. I don't want to speed date any money. But when you think about money as a relationship and you compare it, I know you've all been guests on my podcast, and I love the episodes that we had done together, but paralleling that love, treating money like a relationship and having that same concept, and knowing that if you are afraid to connect with money on that deeper level, you're bringing that to the table with your spouse. So knowing what your archetype is, it helps you just have that confidence to be able to say, like, okay, this is where I'm coming from. This is, how I was raised, what I believe about money, and I get where you're coming from. So let's mesh that together and get a good balance. And how can we create a money management system that ebbs and flows between the two of us, so that we're both feel that security, because it's all about that safety, that security that we want to feel. Thank you so much, Zahara. Matt.
Yeah, it's common for 2 people in a couple to have different relationships to money, different saving habits, different spending habits. It can be helpful to have, well, this is just a quick tip, because there's been, like, Zahara, what you said was brilliant. But if there is a spender, to decide on discretionary amounts. So if one of you likes spending and the other one's like, holy shit, how much was that thing? To have an amount where you can each spend without having to ask the other for permission. So just a sort of a simple kind of like agreement that can create some acceptance and flow in your relationship. There was something else, but I've lost it right now. So keep going.
We'll come back to you. I like that answer. When you realize that you get to bring to the table what resonates with you, like let's have a money bucket. Like, my husband loves grills. He spent so much money on grills, and I'll never forget. I was driving home from work one day, and he calls me up. He goes, "Guess what I just bought?" And I'm like, no, you did not. No, tell me you didn't. He's like, yeah, it's a green egg. And he was so excited about this green egg. And we had already owned 4 grills. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh, but this one's special. I'm like, all right, but that's your money bucket. So, my money bucket was always, get my nails done, go for massage.
No.
this guy loves grills and he's a great griller too. So, but I think it's so important. That's our fun money accounts, right? Have your own separate fun money accounts and you get to do whatever you want with them. So awesome.
Yeah,
Karina,
and just to
you
add,
remember now?
sorry. Yeah, just to, one of the ways out of conflicts is to talk about like what goals do we have as a
Mhm.
couple? What's important to you, what's important to me, what's important to us, and to set financial goals, make certain allocations against those things. So it's not like how much money are you spending on this and how much are you spending on that. It's like, what do we actually want to create together in our lives?
Yeah, and that's such an important conversation, because
Yeah.
I think couples, they get, caught up in the mundane task of everyday life, especially when there's little kids at home, and they stop dreaming almost, right? So having those conversations, going on a date once a week and like talking about like the future, the dreams, like what do you want to do when we retire, or what do we want to do for vacation or whatever, because you should enjoy those moments now, not wait, right?
Yeah.
Very important. Thank you, Matt. Karina.
I remember dreaming of getting a good night's sleep. That was like a very pleasant dream.
So important.
I'm going to bring it to embodiment. I'm going to bring it that it's really helpful for couples. The reason why we're fighting, ironically, which is really uncomfortable, is because we're afraid of the discomfort of losing whatever thing that we think is important. So we're afraid of not feeling free. We're afraid of not feeling loved. We're afraid of all the things that money's about. And those are uncomfortable feelings. And so one of the things that Matt and I teach and that we do with each other is we name that we're feeling uncomfortable and we name what that feeling is. It makes you slow down, makes you get present. It lets your partner like just be with you. There's nothing for them to do except hear what's happening for you. Matt and I had early in our relationship, we did this crazy trip to Vegas, which included being in this gorgeous teepee in the middle of the desert for a couple of nights. It was very, very wild and extraordinary. And we had an agreement about how we were going to split the finances, but it was our first time bumping into finances together. This was over 5 years ago. And it was such a wonderful testament to the work we've done around, people say, you have to communicate, but it's a really big deal to know how to communicate. And it was extraordinary being able to use our tools. I remember we were outside, it was a very warm April day, and we went and sat in a park and we were talking about things. And I took this moment because we'd had an understanding, but he had misremembered something. And so the money was very much in his favor. And I was having lots of things come up about that. And we were sitting in this park and I realized that I was equally uncomfortable receiving that money. And I said, I'm just feeling this tightness and can I just have a cry? And he just held me and I cried and I could feel my heart open. I could feel I had to shift my willingness to receive that money from him. He was literally going to be like giving me money from this trip. And it was such a gift to be able to be in the embodiment of becoming capable of receiving this money from him. It was a very embodied experience. And I think naming that, having that practice in a couple, I think that until you start doing it, you really don't realize how extraordinary the payoff will be. It amplifies your intimacy, your understanding, and your connection like almost nothing else. It's really beautiful.
So it became an opportunity to understand one another, build some of our foundation together as well, around money, around trust, how we move through emotional circumstances. So we really allowed it to include all those things, as opposed to like, we just got to figure out the money.
Yeah. Which would have been so unsatisfying. He would have been like, okay, this is your share. Okay. I would be like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And it would have not felt connecting. Whereas being able to talk about it, and we did it in chunks and we did it in an embodied, like naming our feelings way. Yeah, it made it actually quite magical.
Yeah.
And you're still together. That's important. Yeah, and identifying those early on in the relationship is so important. I know a lot of couples get together and they never have those conversations around money, and they just get uncomfortable. And there's so many out there that don't even combine their money, right? Everything is separate, and they've been married for years. And then there's the ones that the other spouse takes care of everything, whether they be the man or the woman. And I know a lot of widows and widowers, all of a sudden they lose their spouse. They have no idea even where the checkbook is or what bank the accounts are at. So it's really important for both, for each partner to understand exactly like where the money is flowing and where it's being kept and exactly how much it is. So, I'm just going to plug in, like, have this written down somewhere, because with the age of computer, sometimes you don't have access to all those passwords. Have like an estate planning guide where you write down, like, this is where the money is, this is the life insurance, all the things that your loved ones, your partner would need to know should something happen to you. Because the stress of not knowing and not being able to have that conversation, like, I work with a woman who is in her 60s, and she was petrified to work with me because she didn't even know what a checkbook was. And she had gotten divorced after 28 years of marriage. Her husband took care of everything for her and basically gave her money and said, here, like, use this card for groceries, use this card for this, and here's cash for gas. So she was like doled out money, and she knew exactly what to do with it, but she never even paid attention to paying a gas and electric bill. So we started her from scratch, right? And now she's really savvy with her money. She paid off $30,000 worth of debt. And she's like, I wonder why my husband never allowed me to do that, right? Why didn't he allow me to manage the money? And then we worked through some of that, like, her money story was she wanted to be taken care of, and that was his way of taking care of her, not realizing that it was detrimental should something happen. And the divorce, like, you expect, it was totally blindsided. But yeah, so important to have those conversations. And like, as you're sharing like that pressure, and that I can just feel the partners out there like gulp like, but just say the words, because what we think is going to happen is completely different. The conversation goes completely different, especially when you come from the place of, Carina, you had mentioned about feelings. When you are expressing your feelings, no one can take that away from you. They can't tell you don't feel that way. So when you start a conversation with, I feel this way, that's going to open up the door for communication, for love, for respect and kindness. And for some reason, we tell ourselves these stories that, oh no, it's going to go this way. And I believe that's from our childhood. Like when we, buried deep in our subconscious, when our children were little, or when we were little kids, our parents were having conversations, and maybe that's what they had experienced. And we believe that that's our own, when it's not. It's just wired in us, and we get to unwire it. So thank you for sharing all of that gold. I'm getting really excited about this conversation. Like, this is so much fun. You guys having fun?
Yeah,
Definitely.
very glad to be here.
So we have our final question. How do you help couples navigate situations where there has been financial infidelity or hidden financial behaviors? Great question. Let's start with you, Carina.
Beautiful. So I would say we want to have the both and of practical, addressing the issue practically. Okay, this happened. What's our plan going forward? If it's a large sum of money, do we need to pay it back? Are we now in debt? Do we need to like adjust our budget? Like, get really practical is one category. And then kind of like what we've been talking about through the whole conversation is to get curious. What happened? Why did you need to do that? What came up in you that felt important, that felt like you didn't have a choice? Why didn't you want to share that with me? What was the need? What was the itch that got scratched by doing that? Money, I believe it can be a spiritual teacher, and we use money for all sorts of things. People call it retail therapy for a reason. It's not that you needed that sweater, I promise you. So, what is the hurt that's getting soothed by having that retail therapy? And And yeah, so that both ends. So get really practical so that you can both feel like you're back on track, have that conversation, that plan, and then get curious so that maybe you need some counseling, maybe you need coaching, maybe they've got something bigger that they're on the verge of that that's feeling really scary, and to take a look at that so you can do that together like a team, help with whatever came up with that infidelity, that financial infidelity.
Yeah, thank you. And it's just so important. And it's all about that open communication and understanding like why did I do that? And then coming forth and saying, okay, this is what happened. And, you know, and especially like if you keep your finances separate, I imagine there's this feeling of, well, it's my money anyways. You know, I know in some states, if you get an inheritance, you don't have to share it with your partner. And it's like, what? No, everything's 50-50. And, you know, but that's like an underlying rule. And it's like, why would you get an inheritance? And I follow Dave Ramsey and his daughter, Rachel Cruz, and I was listening to her on her YouTube channel, and she was saying, okay, couples out there, you have kids together. Why are your bank accounts separate? You must trust each other. You know, when we think about why are bank accounts separate, it's because there's a trust issue, and where does that come from? You know, and definitely something buried in childhood and doing some undigging. So thank you for that, Carina. Zahara.
Yeah, so the financial infidelity that may exist, I would say, there's something that I'm Gottman trained, and so attune, and attach is what we utilize when there has been any type of infidelity that exists. And so starting with, let's put it all on the table, like leave no stone unturned. And so that I couldn't get that one out. But so that there aren't these lingering questions, right, from the person that was betrayed, right? Who felt betrayed by the secrecy or the emotional infidelity. And so let's put it all on the table. That's the first step. Ask all the questions and be willing to be transparent, right? So this isn't the time for hiding or like, well, I'm gonna tell a little bit of the story, but not all of it. No, in order to move forward in an effective and productive way, you have to be fully transparent, ask the questions, and then we can talk about moving forward, right? Moving forward looks like, so what do we want to do now? Right. So we've asked all the questions. What do we want to do now? And what does that look like for us as a collective or separately, whatever that is, whatever you decide. And then attaching, like doing the work, actually making, putting those things into action. So it's not just lip service, but we are creating a space where we can build trust and vulnerability regarding this matter and know that I see you doing the work, right? Which is different from maybe what was being done previously, and it's just in a different way. And so I would say definitely those are some steps that I would recommend with navigating financial infidelity.
Yeah, so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Matt.
To add the willingness, like it's being betrayed is a horrible experience, for the partner that's done the betraying to be willing to look at the part they played, to be willing to do that exploration as to why they behaved in that way, to go on that journey, which is going to be uncomfortable, but that willingness is crucial. And like Zahara was saying, to be transparent, to put it all out, the whole story, and for the partner that was betrayed to really think about what do I need to see from my partner to be able to rebuild my trust, and to come from a place of of love, of understanding, of curiosity versus kind of punishment, which can be, can be very easy to be in that space of like, I'm going to make you suffer. And this is what it looks like. This is what I need you to do for me, to be able to, and, maybe needing some help in stepping out of that energy into, okay, what would feel trustworthy? What actions, what behavior, what alignment of what you're saying and what you're doing would feel trustworthy to me, and that I can see in a consistent way that's going to help me trust you again.
Yeah. And What comes to mind for me is like trust is earned, not given, right? And when you get betrayed that way, it's really challenging to say, oh, okay, like, yeah, let's have you, be in control or like partial control or whatever. I was working with a woman who second marriage, she worked full time. She had a fantastic job, had a 401k, all the good. She had assets, everything. But she had a credit card. You talked about the retail therapy, Kareem. When you think about that, she used credit cards constantly. She was going on trips with her girlfriends like once a month, and then she was buying all this stuff. And her husband was like, you keep spending all this money. And like she always, they had this big, beautiful home, and they actually had to downsize because they couldn't afford the mortgage because of the debt that she had created. And he's like, we can't keep doing this. Like, you've borrowed from your 401k, you've got these credit cards maxed out, you're going on vacation once a month, because you've got to slow down. You got to like stop. Like, let's create a money management. And she wouldn't have anything to do with it. And when we started working together, she started, it was a way to soothe herself, because she felt bad, like it was their second marriage. They had a baby together, that the baby was a teenager now, and she felt this deprived. She felt like that everybody else was better than her, and that she was raising the bar all the time. So her spending wasn't even related to the desire to have things. It was related to the desire of feeling safe and feeling secure, because in her other marriage, her husband pissed through all the money. And now this guy that she was married to was very steady and secure, and he wasn't frugal or anything, but he was a good saver, and he made good choices. Like, he was very handy, so he did all the work himself, like when she wanted something remodeled. And when you were talking, Matt, it just brought that. I remember working with her, and it took almost 3 months for her to say, oh, I don't have a retail therapy problem. I have a conscious problem, because I'm so afraid. And then when she sat down and had that conversation with him, then they were able to say, okay, let's put a system in place, and then let me have my fun money so I can do that. And, it took her some time she paid off all of her credit card debt. But then within 2 years, when we stopped working together, she racked it all back up and called me. She's like, I think I need some more work. And I'm like, okay, maybe you need a counselor. Maybe you need to go deeper out of my specialty. So like, you have the tools to pay down the debt. So let's talk about like what this really is all about. And she ended up going into therapy, and it helped her tremendously. So the gold that you all shared, it's so important. And, if you could summarize it in 3 words, I love that. I didn't even know I was going to ask this question. So no panic, but 3 words, what advice would you give to partners in their relationship with money and having that conversation? This is your love challenge. Take your time. You have 4 minutes.
Communicate, curiosity, connect.
What was the first one?
Communicate.
Communicate, curiosity, and connect. I love it. So those of you listening, you ladies and gents out there, write those 3 words down. Watching on a replay, rewind, go get a piece of paper and pen, and write it down. Zahara.
Yes, I would say I go back to transparency. Very, very important. Be non-judgmental, for sure. And what's the third one? Real quick, it just left me. Have fun with it. Like, it can be fun. It's a tool, right? I think that you teach that. It's a tool. Use it. Have fun with it.
I love that. So have fun, transparency,
And non-judgmental.
non-judgmental. So important. When we can get away from the judgment zone, it opens up that trust door. So beautiful. Thank you. Carina.
I'm going to make it a mini story. Be curious together.
Oh.
Be curious together. You're in
I
it
love
together.
that. That is beautiful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for sharing your time, your energy with us. And for those of you watching, check the show notes. If you're live in the Facebook group or watching the replay, check the comments and show them some love. go visit their websites. I know they have some gifts for you on their websites. Zahara's got that beautiful book, and you can just learn and knowledge. And if you're someone who is in a relationship and you really want support with that, these are your coaches to connect with. And remember, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's what you do with it.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.